The most important thing in practicing meditation and in staying in a process of learning and paying attention to the teachings is motivation. Because in order to maintain a practice and to do it the way it needs to be done, and in order to maintain your involvement and commitment to being awake and to realizing your true nature and to experience that consistently, it's going to take tremendous, consistent motivation. Because the drift is to stay in the patterns. The default state is to stay in the patterns, to stay in the story. The story is the narrative, the story is the drama, the story is what your voice in your head is telling you all the time about yourself and about life. And it has a tremendous drawl, there's a tremendous attachment to this story. Because human beings tend to live in a story. You're a character living in a story. And that character living in a story for most of humanity is reality. It's not seen to be a story, it's seen to be the truth. They're not seeing themselves to be a character, they're seeing that to be real. I am a person, and my life is a story, and that is a reality. And that's the reality that I'm living in. And I'm living in that reality in a way that I'm attempting to get the story to go the way I want it to go. It's a dramatic story because it doesn't go the way you want it to go. And so there's drama, and the drama has to do with the struggle to get it to go the way you want it to go, or the resistance to the way it's going that you don't want it to go, or the ways that you attempt to escape from the experience of being in the story and being the character by distracting yourself from the story. So to break free, to wake up from this dream requires motivation. It may require a shock. It's often the case that we hear that people who are diagnosed with a terminal illness, or people that all of a sudden have dramatic changes in their life by somebody close to them dying, or being in a serious accident, or losing some major faculty, like losing your sight, losing your hearing, that these shocks often help people to come out of the dream and wake up and see what's actually going on, that this life is unpredictable and unstable, and that who they were being was unpredictable and unstable. And because of the shock, it's often the case that people find the motivation. I was mentioning earlier that some teachers who came up with very powerful processes like Michael Brown or Lester Levinson were in very challenging situations. In the case of Michael Brown, he was in chronic pain. In the case of Lester Levinson, he was diagnosed with terminal illness. His body was falling apart and he had only months to live. And so these people found the motivation out of the desperation they experienced in making contact with the situation that they were in. But for most of us, those situations don't necessarily occur, or if they do occur, even if they do occur for many human beings, they don't experience the shock as a wake-up call, they experience the shock as a trauma that has them go into some mental state or some emotional state of depression or anxiety, sleep issues, not being able to eat. And this can go on for a long time. It can go on for the rest of a person's life. But if you come in contact, if you have the good fortune of coming into contact with these teachings and practices say that these shocks are valuable. They're opportunities to come out of the dream, to wake up and see things as they are. And in order to do these practices and to study these teachings in a way that will work, there has to be a consistent motivation. And so the suggestion that's made by many teachers in many traditions is to really face your death, is to really contemplate your death, is to really allow yourself to be clear that death is coming and that you don't know when it's going to happen, and to really let that hit you like a shock, to let yourself experience the fear involved, and then to use the energy of that fear and the shock to motivate yourself to understand and to realize that you don't have time. You can't waste time. You have to use the precious time that you have in this human experience, which is considered a very high blessing in many traditions. Just to be born in a human life is considered a very high blessing in many traditions. So to use this opportunity to really stay motivated, to stay engaged with paying attention to the truth, living with death, living with the unpredictability of life. And what I mean by that is that you don't know what's going to happen today. You don't know what's going to happen in the next few hours. And because nothing serious happens in the next few hours, it just helps to stay asleep. It helps us to live in this dream, in this assumption that everything is okay. So to face reality is a fearful process because the reality is a reality of impermanence. It's a reality in which you come to be aware of the fact that life is relatively very short, and the body is a time body. It's going to die. The motivation that can come from that can allow you to begin to pay attention and take very seriously the possibility of living in the eternal moment. But in order to do that, you have to come out of the conditioning, you have to come out of the sleep. You have to take the practice of meditation very seriously and pay close attention to what it is when you meditate. What are you doing when you're meditating? In reality, you're not doing anything, you're simply being aware. And that may sound like a simple thing, but the reality of it is being aware is the way out. Being aware is the way out of the impermanence, the way out of the time-bound life. To be aware of the moment, to be aware of the truth of yourself as consciousness, as awareness itself. And to begin to stabilize this, to begin to experience this truth, so that when you're faced with the unpredictable, so that when you're faced with the inevitable realities that will come, that you can be present to those experiences, you can let go, knowing that who you are and experiencing that who you are is larger than the circumstances. Even to the point that you can get to experience your own death as a change, but not an ending. This takes tremendous practice and tremendous work, but it is possible. You know, the more that I come in contact with these ancient teachings, I've been looking into some of the forms of Tibetan Buddhism, for example, the Tantric teachings and the Shogun teachings and the Zen. And there's so much detail involved, there's so much complication involved just in those teachings, and there are many, many teachings like that. So one of the things that occurred to me is that, am I kidding myself? Am I presenting you with an unfair challenge, that this is too complicated for you, that this is, in many of these traditions, they don't teach the high teachings, the Tantric teachings, the Maha Mudra teachings, the Shogun teachings, until a student has been practicing meditation and learning about the philosophy and the understandings about energy and all the other details for many, many years before they're allowed to be exposed to these teachings. But the way I see it is that if it is possible, if it is the case in the end that you are already the truth, and this possibility is a real possibility, then the way I see it is that it is possible and it is available for you to become enlightened in this life, you know, to wake up in this life, to transcend time in this life. It is possible. It does happen. And it is more possible now than it ever was. But it's going to take motivation, it's going to take a commitment, it's going to take a commitment and motivation to maintain a meditation practice. It's going to take a commitment and motivation to be an ongoing student of the teachings, to stay grounded in the awareness, to stay open-minded, to be a beginner's mind, and to understand what's at stake. To understand that what's at stake is your life, and that you can wake up and you can let the relationship you have with your thought processes and the relationship you have with the idea you have of yourself as a person, you can let that go. You can allow yourself to see it for what it is. Of course, it will remain. But the fact that it remains doesn't matter, because if you know that that's not what you are, then you're free from the effects of it. You're free from being stuck in a story. You're free from being the character in the story. And while all that may continue, there's no attachment to it. You can disengage from the story. The story will still be there, and you can interact with life in a way that's much more responsive and responsible. And of course, what that allows is a sense of peace and satisfaction and well-being. So that's my message to you today, is to see if you can really take on facing the truth. See if you can really take on facing death, facing the unpredictability of life, facing the impermanence of it all. Can you let yourself face that? Can you contemplate that? Can you let yourself experience the fear that will come up when you make contact with that? Can you allow yourself to go through that experience of fear and see it for what it is, that it's not going to kill you to be afraid, that you can experience fear and understand that it's nothing more than sensations in the body. It's nothing more than fearful thoughts. And as you presence yourself to that, it will pass, and on the other side of it is peace. So if you face the truth and you allow yourself to experience the fear of letting go, and you allow yourself to let go of identifying with the personality in the body, then you're closer to the possibility. Then you have the motivation. You can take that energy and use it to pay attention moment to moment, day by day, to the truth, to who you are, to the reality of life. And part of this experience of letting go and being present to the truth is that the idea that you have no control is actually helpful, because it can help to allow you to let go. If you have no control, one of the reasons having no control is what happens, or what you come to understand, is because awareness doesn't need control. Right? So not having control from an awareness perspective, from the perspective of the truth of yourself as awareness, is a good thing, because you don't need control. You can let yourself go and let whatever happens happen and be present to that without controlling anything, because nothing can hurt you, nothing can harm you. So what is there to control? What is there to hold on to? And when that's the case, you can actually enjoy the experience. So that's the message today. The message is motivation. Motivation is central to what this is all about. And I suggest to you that you look and see where you're at with motivation. That you look and see, are you willing to confront reality? Are you willing to face the truth? Are you willing to face your death? Are you willing to face the unpredictability of life? That's an essential aspect of this process. So, I really don't want to say any more than that, because if you take my suggestion, if you understand the intention of the suggestion, then you will use the opportunity, maybe the next time you sit and meditate, to really pay attention to the truth and allow yourself to experience what being present to the truth feels like. Self-realization is an intention. You know, the awareness that we are, the truth of what we are as awareness, has the intention of being itself, has the intention of realizing itself. That's the process that's occurring already, right? Whether or not you align with that, whether or not you cooperate with that, depends on whether you use the circumstances in your life, right, as a springboard, as a way of energizing that intention and working consistent with it. That would be grace. And I mentioned these people who were in these desperate situations, but even though they were in desperate situations, there are many, many people, there are millions of people that are in desperate situations all the time, right? But even among those millions of people in those desperate situations, very few of them take the opportunity to use that situation as a motivation to look beyond the circumstances to the possibility of being awake and aware. So it's not just the circumstances. You know, that's one of the reasons that I say to you, you know, you've had the good fortune of coming into contact with this possibility. And in the cases of these people, they had the good fortune of coming into contact with the possibility, and then they mustered, you know, then they used their motivation in order to accomplish, in order to make the effort necessary to break free and become awake. So you have to have exposure to this possibility, and you've had exposure to this possibility, right? So it would be a damn shame if you've been exposed to this possibility, right? If you've been given the invitation to wake up, and it's been suggested to you that you can wake up and be alive, right? And live in the eternal moment and realize your true nature. It would be a damn shame if you've come into contact with that and then you didn't pursue it, right? And what I'm saying to you is don't wait until you get your diagnosis. You know, don't wait until you're in some desperate situation. Face the fact, face the truth that those things are there. They may have not happened yet, but they're there. And they are going to happen. So face it now. Have the experience now of those things happening, and then use that to motivate yourself to wake up and to stay consistently awake, paying attention. It's a big challenge, and that's why it takes effort. It's an interesting paradox because it takes a tremendous amount of effort to accomplish nothing. That's what we're talking about. It takes a tremendous amount of effort to accomplish nothing, because what you're accomplishing is what's already there. The accomplishment is revealing it to yourself, making contact with the experience, and living the reality of it, which is already happening, right? But it takes a big effort to break out of the sleep and break out of the dream so that you can have what you already have. Amen.